For years and years, we thought that racism was an aberration, a defect on the American scene, one that was a holdover from slavery, one that we had the tools to correct through law, and one that there was a desire to correct. And it's taken us a long time to recognize that that was a wrong diagnosis.
Imagine it's 1954. You're ringside at the legal fight of the century. 2 cases in each corner of a lit up boxing ring. Supreme Court is the ref with the black and white shirt on. Irony. Ref grabs the mic to give context to a fight. He announces, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created." How? From the red corner, Plessy versus Ferguson shouts, "Separate but equal. All men are created separate but equal. Segregate the American people. Keep blacks and whites separate. We'll pretend that it's equal. And call it the American way."
The Supreme Court in Plessy versus Ferguson interpreted the meaning of equal to mean separate but equal. In everything, in schools, in public accommodations, water fountains, everything.
But the blue corner holds Brown versus Board of Education. They scream back over the crowd, "No, that's illegal. You use this as an excuse to downgrade black people. Everything is separate, but nothing is equal. We get used when white folk get new. We get the back when white folk get the front. All the best things have signs that say white folks only. You humiliate us legally, and it's unconstitutional."
Brown really pushed back against this idea that something that was separate could be equal. There's one way of looking at the movement to desegregate as an issue of we desire proximity to whiteness. There's another way to look at it as we want to have access to equitable resources, equitable treatment that is independent from a proximity to whiteness.
The Brown decision did not deal with how we're going to make things equal. How do we know we've got equity here in the resources? And it's important that the resources be shared fairly and equally in order for us to have true equality.
They fight from 1896 to 1954, and popular thought says that Brown versus Board won the war. But Derek Bell says different.
I published an article called Just My Imagination. I did it right after I got tenure. Derek Bell read it, and he sent me a note to tell me how important that article was and the insights that I had brought to it. And I thought, this man, this giant of a scholar, took the time to tell me that what I had published mattered.
One of the things he was known for was his position on Brown versus Board of Education and whether or not it would have been more advantageous had the case gone differently for the black community.
The theory of Derek Bell that integration was taking African Americans in general in a backwards direction, I feel as though there's a lot of truth to that. For me to sit next to you was never what was discussed through the literature. For me to drink water with you, for me to watch a movie with you. When Ida B. Wells was writing the red letter about anti-lynching when her friend had been murdered, she wasn't trying to sit next to anybody. It's like intellectual Aikido. All this momentum for 100 and some odd years of freedom just got flipped at the last minute, and it changed into this discussion about sitting next to each other and drinking from water fountains.
Derek Bell says that Brown versus Board of Education, and by extension integration as a whole, was a failure. Not because the lawyers didn't argue or the judges were corrupt. No, Derek Bell says we focused too much on the separate and not enough on the equal. We were too focused on integrating with white people and not focused enough on making sure we had our own.
I am old enough to remember segregation in that form where black folk lived in the community surrounded by itself, run by itself, controlled by itself. And it was nice. Don't get me wrong, it was nice. We did not have to give up what we had in our segregated communities to enjoy the fruits of an integrated community. I think we surrendered our community and the positive things in our segregated community in order to be part of the integrated community.
This question of integration versus segregation. And I think my generation are much more interested in a politics that transcends that dichotomy and is much more about the transformation of society and the unraveling of power structures.
I was personally, as a child, in that first wave of the implementation of Brown that occurred in different places in the country. I remember having to be forced to fit into someone else's frame. That integration, so-called integration, meant that I had to give up part of myself.
A good example is a VIP rope. VIP is a section in the club that somebody designates. They just decide that's VIP. Tomorrow I can say that's VIP. And you'll pay more money to be over there today, and you'll pay more money to be over there tomorrow. Because I'm in power, and I've designated that as more important. So you're gonna pay $50 to stand on that side of this room tonight. And I'm gonna put a little velvet rope up there. So the whole idea is perception and power.
See, according to Bell, Brown meant well, but there were some things that weren't considered. The Supreme Court attempted to change the morality of a country through the laws of a country. White people would get on board, they figured, but they didn't. And as we know from today, all people did was find other ways to segregate.
I think after 246 years of chattel enslavement, we have figuratively discovered a weakened immune system. And if you've ever had a weakened immune system, one of the things that you need to do is be to some degree quarantined, even from those who are said to be well. So for you to go outside and play with everybody that's well, when you have a weakened immune system, can operate to your detriment. You might have a desire to go and interact with them. You might have a desire to go and play with them, but somebody who's wiser than you will say, no, you need to stay by yourself and get strong enough so that when you interact with them, it doesn't work against you and destroy you or kill you. African Americans have had a weakened immune system, and we wanted to run out and play with everybody else right away and integrate and wonder why we got sicker.
I don't know the metaphor of black folk come into the larger society, having immune systems that are damaged. I think it's more the other way around, is that the environment is still damaged. I mean, it's just like putting medicine into a damaged body. The medicine's not bad. It's the body that's bad. The body's got to get better. So I don't know if black folk were damaged going into it. I think the body was damaged.
The other thing that narrative does is it says that in order for me to prove that I have access to certain rights and certain amount of dignity and respect, I have to show to you that I'm actually damaged. And that was the crux of Brown v. Board, was to say that segregation caused harm to the psyche of black children, right? And so then it becomes a situation where you constantly have to prove this individual psychic harm, when in fact the system itself is creating this inequality. And there's actually nothing wrong with black people.
Integration has been damaged in this country. The word, the concept, it never happened the way I think the lawyers and all those complainants in all those cases who sacrificed so much, I don't think it happened the way that they thought it was going to happen. And so I think we may need another word, and I don't think the word is diversity, by the way. I think diversity is in danger of becoming the kind of problem word that integration is. Too often, diversity is being used as a substitute for integration, which means that we're still talking assimilation. And assimilation is not the objective here. You see, the primary default in this country is difference is a problem. Different from what? Different from what we say is the norm. But the norm, racially, is the dominant culture, which is the white culture, which is really white supremacy. It's about, instead of developing a plan or designing a scheme, a way of thinking that will embrace the difference, which means that the norm has to change. Oh, now we're talking. Now we'll get something. Now we'll get to the issue of equity. And that is a very tough thing to do.
Who's to say they were wrong in exercising new rights? Or that Derek Bell was right? Or that a fight that was so long and hard fought may not have been as great as we'd like? 2 steps forward or 2 steps back?